Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at someone who wasn't just, a movie star. We're diving into the life of Elizabeth Taylor.
Exactly. She was more than a legend. She was almost an architect. An architect of what we think of as modern stardom.
Right. She came up through that old Hollywood studio system, the really controlling one.
But she didn't just survive it. She, in many ways, helped dismantle it, or at least carve out a new path. She rewrote the rules for celebrity finance, for activism.
And turned this incredibly scrutinized, often chaotic personal life into this powerful tool.
That's really the mission for today, isn't it?
It's
So unpack how she did that. We've looked at the sources, the biographies, the interviews.
Yeah, we want to understand the connection between the career highs, those relentless public dramas, 8 marriages to 7 men.
Right. And then this truly groundbreaking philanthropy later on. How did she manage that balancing act? How did she wield that fame?
And maybe where do we even start? Before the career, before the scandals, there was just the sheer visual impact.
You have to start there. The eyes, it sounds like a cliche, but it was real.
People described them as violet, didn't they?
They did. They were blue, technically, but there was this rare genetic mutation, dystichiasis.
Okay, what's that?
It means she had a double row of eyelashes, naturally thick, dark lashes.
Wow.
And that, combined with how pigment layered in her eyes, often made them appear this incredible violet color, especially on camera.
So from the very beginning, her look was just extraordinary, impossible to ignore.
Absolutely. And that double row of lashes, it gave her this natural, intense framing for her eyes. It created this instant signature.
It kind of set the stage, didn't it, for a life where her image, the way she looked, was always front and center.
Completely. The line between Elizabeth Taylor, the person, and Elizabeth Taylor, the image or the character, it blurred almost immediately. The public was always fascinated trying to figure her out.
And you get the sense she learned pretty early on how to maybe play with that fascination.
Oh, definitely. She understood its power. From child star to controlled starlet, 1932, 1951.
So let's trace that back. Where did it all begin? She was born in London, right? 1932.
That's right, Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor. Her parents were American, though. Frances Taylor, an art dealer, and Sarah Southern, who had actually been an actress herself but gave it up.
So because her parents were American, she had dual citizenship from birth, British and American.
Exactly. And that flexibility proved important pretty quickly.
Oh, so...
Well, with war looming in Europe, the family moved. They left London in 1939 and headed for Los Angeles, settled in Beverly Hills.
And her father, being an art dealer, probably helped open some doors in L.A.
Definitely. His gallery attracted a lot of film industry people. That was the initial connection.
Her first contract wasn't MGM, though, was it? It was Universal.
Right, Universal in 1941. But it didn't stick. Lasted about a year.
Why not?
Famously, a director there said her eyes were too old. Can you imagine? And apparently she was seen as too direct, not quite the sweet, compliant child star they expected.
Huh. Too old eyes. So then came MGM.
Then came MGM. And they knew exactly what they had. They signed her and really crafted that teen star image, especially with National Velvet in 1944.
She was only 12 then.
12 years old. And that film was massive. She later called it the most exciting film of her career. It really launched her.
Okay, so this is where we get into that studio system control you mentioned. She called MGM a big extended factory. What did that actually mean day to day?
It meant total control, like physical control.
Yeah.
MGM dictated her appearance down to the smallest detail.
Like what?
They made her wear braces. Okay, maybe standard. But then they actually had 2 of her baby teeth pulled out for aesthetics.
Pulled out, seriously.
Seriously. And they tried to change her name. They wanted to call her Virginia.
Virginia Taylor. Doesn't quite have the same ring.
She refused point blank. Good for her. But it shows the level of control they sought. She said her childhood basically ended when she became a star because the studio managed everything, her schedule, her look, her public appearances.
You can see why she'd resent that.
Deeply. By the early 50s, she apparently hated many of the films they were putting her in. She felt trapped, even talked about wanting to quit acting altogether.
But the studio wasn't done with her yet. They had to manage that tricky transition from child star to adult actress.
And they did it in the most MGM way possible, by orchestrating her personal life for maximum publicity.
You're talking about the first marriage to Nicky Hilton.
Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr., yeah.
Yeah.
The Hotel Air, their wedding in 1950 was this huge, highly publicized event.
Which MGM basically stage managed.
Absolutely. It was timed perfectly to promote her film, Father of the Bride.
Yeah.
They were selling this image of the perfect young starlet finding her perfect match. It was pure PR.
But the reality was grim.
Horrifyingly so. The marriage was a catastrophe. It only lasted 8 months.
Why did it end so quickly?
Hilton was reportedly abusive emotionally and struggled badly with alcohol. The sources are pretty clear she actually suffered a miscarriage after one of his violent episodes.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. The official reason for the divorce in January 51 was mental cruelty. And suddenly, this private nightmare became a public scandal, her first taste of that intense tabloid scrutiny.
But right around that same time, amidst all that personal turmoil, something shifted professionally.
Yes, crucially. The film A Place in the Sun came out in 1951.
Directed by George Stevens.
Right. And she always said that was the first time she felt a director asked her to act, really act. Not just be beautiful, not just be yourself, but to find complexity in a character.
And it worked.
It worked. Critics took notice. It was the first time since National Velvet, really, that she got serious critical praise. It showed she had genuine talent beyond the studio glow. The height of Hollywood power, 1952-1960.
So she's getting critical acclaim, but she's still tied to MGM, right? She signed another contract?
She did. A new 7-year contract in 1952. And the timing is key here.
Why?
She just married Michael Wilding, her second husband, and she was pregnant. She needed the financial stability.
So MGM had leverage.
Oh, absolutely. Even though she was arguably one of their biggest, most bankable stars, they kept her on a leash financially. Her salary was about $4,700 a week.
Which sounds like a lot for the 50s.
It's decent, sure, but maybe not what you'd expect for Elizabeth Taylor. And crucially, MGM also gave them a loan for a house. That creates dependency. It meant the studio still had significant say over her career choices.
And that meant more roles she didn't want.
Exactly. She particularly hated the historical epics they kept sticking her in. Things like Ivanhoe or Beau Brummel.
Why those specifically?
She complained about the preparation. The elaborate costumes, the heavy wigs and makeup meant getting up hours earlier. She sounded grueling and tedious. She even said her performance in Beau Brummel was one of her worst ever. Just pure resentment showing through.
But the industry itself was changing around this time, wasn't it? Television was starting to bite.
Hugely. Television was becoming a massive competitor, pulling audiences away from cinemas. The studios realized they couldn't just churn out cheap B-movies anymore.
They had to offer something different, something bigger, better.
Precisely. They started focusing on fewer films, but bigger budget, higher quality productions, often based on hit novels or plays. And ironically, this industry crisis actually benefited Taylor.
How so?
It meant studios were forced to offer her more challenging dramatic roles to draw audiences back. They needed her star power for these prestige pictures.
And this is where she really started to shine, talent-wise.
Absolutely. Look at Giant in 1956. Huge film. She famously didn't get along with the director, George Stevens, again.
And wasn't that the film James Dean was making when he died?
Yes, tragically. So, a difficult production in many ways. But her performance, rave reviews. One critic called it an astonishing revelation of unsuspected gifts.
Wow, so the critical respect was growing.
Definitely. And industry recognition followed. She got her first Oscar nomination for Best Actress for Raintree County in 1957.
But the film that really seems to fuse the personal drama and the professional peak was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, right? 1958.
That's the one. A perfect storm, in a way. Because filming coincided with just unbelievable personal tragedy for her.
Her third husband, Mike Todd, the producer, he died, didn't he?
Yes, in a plane crash. Absolutely devastating for her. She was completely shattered.
And yet, she went back to work on Cat almost immediately.
Just 3 weeks later. She said later that acting, becoming Maggie the cat in that Tennessee Williams story, was the only way she could function. It was her escape, her therapy maybe.
And you can feel that raw emotion in the performance, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. It's electrifying. Critics and audiences agreed it was hailed as a career highlight. She poured all that grief and turmoil into the role.
But then almost immediately after Todd's death, the narrative shifted again, dramatically.
Yeah. The affair with Eddie Fisher started.
Who was, of course, married to Debbie Reynolds at the time. They were America's sweethearts.
Exactly. And the media explosion was instantaneous and incredibly harsh.
She went from grieving widow to...
Earnwrecker. Overnight. Public enemy #1, practically. The tabloids had a field day.
But here's the twist, right? How did MGM react?
They saw dollar signs. Pure and simple.
Yeah.
The scandal wasn't a PR disaster for them. It was promotional gold.
They actually used it to sell the movie.
Explicitly. Look at the posters for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Yeah.
It's all sultry Liz Taylor lounging on a bed in a silk slip. They leaned right into the scandalous woman image the affair had created.
And it worked.
Big time. The scandal fueled massive public interest. Kat was a huge hit, and she became the second most profitable star of the year.
So a pattern emerges. The more scandalous her private life, the better the box office.
It seemed that way. It happened again with her next big film, another Tennessee Williams adaptation, suddenly last summer in 1959.
For which she won her first Golden Globe.
Right. And again, despite the film dealing with some pretty dark, complex themes, mental illness, trauma, even homosexuality.
The marketing focused on her sex appeal.
Totally. The iconic image from that film's promotion is her in that white swimsuit. It was all about selling her allure, leveraging that public persona.
Which brings us to the end of her MGM contract and the film Butterfield 8 in 1960.
Oh, she hated making that film. Hated it.
Why?
Because MGM essentially forced her into it to fulfill her contract. And the role. Gloria Wandress, a high-class call girl.
So casting the scandalous Elizabeth Taylor as a scandalous woman?
Exactly. It was incredibly cynical. MGM knew audiences would flock to see her play a part that seemed to mirror her tabloid image. They were deliberately exploiting her notoriety one last time. She felt it was degrading.
And yet,
she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for that very role.
her first Oscar. For the film she despised, whose role she felt was forced on her as a punishment and a publicity stunt.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? Hollywood gives her its highest honor for the performance she felt was the most cynically manufactured. It kind of proved her point. The lines were so blurred, maybe the public and even the Academy couldn't separate the actress from the scandal anymore.
Okay, so she finally gets out from under the MGM contract after Butterfield 8. What's her next move?
A massive one. A revolutionary one, really, in terms of money and power in Hollywood. She signs on to do Cleopatra for 20th Century Fox.
And this is where the famous $1 million payday comes in.
The first ever $1 million payday for a single film role. Unprecedented.
Just a flat million.
Not just that. She negotiated brilliantly. She got the $1 million fee plus 10% of the film's gross profits.
Wow.
And there was another clever angle. Her late husband, Mike Todd, had pioneered this advanced widescreen format called Todd AO. She used her leverage regarding the rights to that technology, which the film was using, to strengthen her deal. She wasn't just an actress for hire anymore. She had a stake in the technology, the distribution.
So she becomes the highest paid movie star on the planet.
Instantly.
Yeah.
It completely reset the bar for star salaries. But the film itself, Cleopatra, became legendary for entirely different reasons.
Yeah, it was a famously troubled production, wasn't it?
Troubled is an understatement. It was cursed, almost. Constant delays, location shoots that went wrong, the sets and costumes were unbelievably expensive, blowing the budget sky high.
And then Taylor herself got seriously ill during filming.
Near fatally ill. March 1961, she contracted severe pneumonia. It got so bad she needed an emergency tracheotomy to breathe.
I remember hearing reports. Some news outlets even reported she died.
One agency did, yeah, it was that serious. The scar from the tracheotomy, by the way, was visible for the rest of her life.
So the production is already chaotic, expensive, dangerous, and then comes the romance.
Then comes Richard Burton, her married co-star, playing Mark Antony to her Cleopatra.
And their affair didn't exactly stay private.
Not even close. The paparazzi caught them together on a yacht off the coast of Italy in Ischia. Those photos went global.
And this was different from previous scandals.
Some sociologists point to this as a turning point. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It felt like irrefutable visual proof of this intensely passionate, illicit affair. It became this massive, ongoing global media event. The private lives of stars were now completely public domain.
And the reaction was intense.
Fierce. The Vatican publicly condemned them, calling it erotic vagrancy. Think about that phrase.
Erotic vagrancy. Wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't just religious authorities. There were actually calls in the U.S. Congress to prevent Taylor and Burton from returning to the United States because their affair was seen as so immoral.
That's incredible, all this swirling around a movie production.
And the movie's finances reflected the chaos. The final cost ballooned to around $62 million.
Which is what, in today's money?
Probably somewhere around $640, $650 million.
Yeah.
Just astronomical. It was the most expensive film ever made at that point.
Did it even make its money back?
Here's the crazy part. It was actually the highest grossing film of 1963. A huge hit by normal standards.
Right.
But because the production costs were so utterly massive, it still almost bankrupted 20th Century Fox. It took them years to recover.
But Taylor, with her contract, she still got paid.
Oh, yeah. Her deal was locked in, the $1 million, the percentage points. She walked away very wealthy, even as the studio was reeling. That shows her business acumen, doesn't it? Securing her end regardless of the film's overall profitability for the studio.
So Cleopatra finally wraps, the divorces happen, and then Taylor and Burton get married in 1964, Liz and Dick.
The marriage of the century, they call it. And they became this powerhouse couple. Over the next 10 years or so, they starred in 11 films together.
And made a fortune.
A reported $88 million combined in that decade. Burton used to joke they were more economically significant than some small countries.
But were the films any good? Critics seem skeptical.
Often, yeah. They frequently complained that watching a Liz and Dick movie felt like reading a gossip column. The sheer force of their celebrity often overshadowed the actual film. Their lifestyle didn't help the diamonds, the jets, the yachts. It was all very public and very excessive.
Except for one film, the one that stands out.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? 1966, that was different.
How so? This was her big artistic statement.
Absolutely. It felt like a deliberate countermove to the glamorous image. She was playing Martha, this bitter, sharp-tongued 50-something woman.
And Taylor wasn't 50-something then.
Not even close. She actively worked to look the part. Gained weight, wore a salt and pepper wig, used makeup to look older, frumpier, more worn down. It was a total rejection of the Elizabeth Taylor goddess persona.
A huge risk professionally.
Huge, but it paid off spectacularly. The film was controversial for its raw language and adult themes, but her performance was universally acclaimed.
And she won her second Oscar for it.
She did. Best Actress again, plus a BAFTA and a load of other awards. It proved she was a serious actress capable of disappearing into a role, not just a celebrity playing herself.
They did other films together after that, right?
Yeah. They even co-produced a pretty successful version of Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew in '67. But the intensity couldn't last forever.
They divorced in 1974.
Then famously remarried, very dramatically, in Botswana in 1975.
Only to divorce again just a year later in 1976.
Right. It was this incredibly passionate, turbulent cycle. She said something quite revealing later on. Something like, all the men after Richard were really just company. He was clearly the great love, despite all the drama. Dovey, career shift and business empire, 1968-2007.
So after the peak of Liz and Dick, what happened to her film career? The late 60s, early 70s, Hollywood was changing again.
It really was. The new Hollywood era was taking old, grittier films, anti-heroes, less focus on traditional glamour.
And Taylor, with her established image, maybe didn't fit that mold anymore.
It seems that way. Plus, her weight fluctuated, which the press commented on relentlessly, and her whole jet-set lifestyle started to seem a bit out of step, maybe even excessive to critics.
So her film roles started to dry up, or at least the successful ones.
Yeah, we see a string of films in this period that were critical and commercial disappointments. Things like Boom or Secret Ceremony, they just didn't land.
Did she have any later successes on screen?
There was one notable win. She won the Silver Bear for Best Actress at the Berlin Film Festival in 1972 for a film called Hammersmith is Out. But generally, the momentum was shifting away from film.
Where did she channel her energy instead?
She tried the stage, took her first really substantial theater role in Lillian Hellman's The Little Foxes on Broadway in 1981.
How did that go?
Commercially, it was a huge success, sold-out run. Critically, the reviews were a bit more mixed, but it showed she was still a major draw. She even did a cameo on the soap opera General Hospital around then.
A sign of the times, maybe? Moving away from cinema dominance?
Could be. She did try one more big stage project with Burton, a revival of Noel Coward's Private Lives in 1983.
How was that reunion?
Poignant, but also kind of sad, according to reports. Critics noted that both of them seemed quite frail, maybe not in the best health. The old magic wasn't quite there.
And wasn't it shortly after that production closed that she took a really significant public step regarding her health?
Yes, she checked herself into the Betty Ford Center.
For addiction?
For addiction to prescription pain medication and alcohol. And this was huge.
Why huge? Other celebrities had struggled, surely.
But Taylor was arguably the first truly global superstar of her magnitude to publicly admit to addiction and seek treatment so openly. It did a lot to destigmatize rehab.
And this addiction, it had roots in her life during her marriage to John Warner, the politician.
That seems to be the case. She married Senator John Warner in 1976, moved to Washington, D.C., tried to play the role of a politician's wife.
And she found it difficult.
Apparently very lonely and isolating. That's when the reliance on prescription drugs and alcohol really seemed to take hold, leading to the need for treatment after their divorce in 1982.
So this period of confronting her health, being public about it, it seems like a pivot point, leading towards something new.
Absolutely. It leads directly into perhaps the most unexpected and ultimately most lucrative chapter of her career. Elizabeth Taylor, the businesswoman.
This is the perfume empire we're talking about.
Exactly. She wasn't the very first celebrity to have a fragrance. Sophia Loren had one earlier, but Taylor took it to a whole different level.
When did this start?
She launched her first scent, Passion, in 1987. Then came the blockbuster, White Diamonds, in 1991, partnering with Elizabeth Arden.
And these weren't just vanity projects where she slapped her name on a bottle.
Not at all. By all accounts, she was deeply involved. She personally oversaw the creation process, the scent profiles, the marketing for all 11 fragrances released under her name. She had strong opinions and invested her own time.
Okay, so put this in perspective financially. How successful were these perfumes?
Mind-bogglingly successful. Here's the headline. Elizabeth Taylor earned significantly more money from her fragrance collection over the years than she did from her entire iconic, decades-long acting career.
Wait, really? More than the million for Cleopatra? More than all those hits?
Way more. When she died, estimates put her estate somewhere between $600 million and maybe even $1 billion. And the vast majority of that wealth came from the ongoing revenue streams from those fragrances, especially White Diamonds, which remains a bestseller.
That's incredible. She basically created a second, even more profitable career out of her own brand.
She mastered the art of monetizing her persona, her fame, on a scale no one had really done before in that way. She turned the very thing she sometimes resented, that intense public focus, into this incredibly powerful, independent financial engine.
And then what did she do with that power, that platform?
She turned it towards activism, specifically HIV and AIDS activism.
This became her major later life cause, didn't it?
Her defining cause. She consciously decided, as she put it, to use the fame that had often felt like a burden as a commodity, her word, to fight for this cause.
What was the catalyst?
The illness and death of her friend and former co-star Rock Hudson in 1985. Hudson's public announcement that he had AIDS was a shockwave, and it galvanized her into action. She saw the fear, the stigma, the lack of response, and knew her voice could make a difference.
And she jumped in early when many others were silent.
One of the very first major celebrities to do so. And she wasn't just lending her name to fundraisers. She was on the front lines. She co-founded the American Foundation for AIDS Research, ANFAR, in 1985.
And later started her own foundation.
Yes, the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, ETF, in 1991.
And her commitment was financial too, wasn't it?
Deeply. She made sure ETF was structured so that she personally covered all of its administrative and overhead costs.
So 100% of public donations went directly to programs.
Exactly, which is incredibly rare in the charity world. It showed her absolute dedication. Her money was ensuring other people's money went where it was needed most. Research, patient care, prevention, education. Over her lifetime, she helped raise over $270 million for the cause.
And she wasn't afraid to get political, was she? This wasn't just about charity galas.
Not at all. She took the fight straight to Washington, D.C. She testified before Senate and House committees multiple times in the late 80s and early 90s.
Using her star power to demand attention.
Absolutely. She wasn't shy about calling out politicians, including Presidents Reagan, Bush Sr., and Clinton, for what she saw as inaction or insufficient response to the epidemic. She leveraged her fame to shame them into paying attention.
Did she have specific political successes?
Probably the most cited one is her role in persuading President Reagan to finally address the AIDS crisis publicly in a major speech in 1987. Reagan had been notoriously reluctant to even say the word AIDS. Taylor used her personal connection, they were old Hollywood colleagues, and relentless public pressure.
That's real impact. Now, there was also that more controversial claim about her activism, right? About an underground network.
Yes, that came out later via her business partner, Kathy Ireland. The claim was that back in the 80s, when official drug approvals were slow and people were dying, Taylor was involved in a sort of underground network.
Like the Dallas Buyers Club idea.
Similar premise. Supposedly smuggling or distributing unapproved experimental AIDS medications to patients who couldn't get them through official channels.
Was this ever fully confirmed?
It's a bit murky. Other activists from the time have questioned the scale or specifics of it. But whether it was a full-blown network or more informal help, the claim itself highlights just how passionate and potentially radical her commitment was. She seemed willing to operate outside the lines, even potentially illegally, if she thought it would save lives.
Okay, let's circle back briefly to the personal life, which never really stopped making headlines. After the Warner marriage ended, there was one more.
Right. Her last husband, Larry Fortinsky.
And the story of how they met is pretty unique.
It really is. They met while they were both patients at the Betty Ford Center in 1988. He was a construction worker.
Talk about worlds colliding.
Completely.
Huh.
But they connected, fell in love, and got married in 1991.
And that wedding itself became another Taylor event, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was held at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch. Huge media frenzy.
And again, she turned the publicity into something else.
She did. They sold the exclusive wedding photos to People magazine for a reported $1 million.
And the money went where?
Straight to her AIDS foundation, ETA. Once again, making her private life serve her public cause.
That marriage didn't last, though, did it?
They divorced in 1996, but apparently they remained very close friends afterwards. She showed real loyalty.
How so?
When she died, she actually left him a significant amount of money in her will, around $825,000. Just showing that continued care and affection, even years after the romance ended.
She seemed to form strong bonds, even platonic ones. Didn't she have a close friendship with Colin Farrell later in life?
She did, yes. An unlikely but reportedly very genuine platonic friendship in her later years.
Beyond marriage, another really significant personal choice was her conversion to Judaism.
Yes, back in 1959. She was raised Christian Scientist, but she converted.
Was it connected to her marriages? She married Mike Todd and Eddie Fisher, who were both Jewish?
She always insisted it wasn't just because of them. She famously said she felt as if I have been a Jew all my life. It seemed to be a deep, personal, spiritual decision for her.
And this conversion led to quite strong political stances.
Very strong. She became a vocal supporter of Israel, a committed Zionist.
And took actions based on that.
Definitely. She bought $100,000 worth of Israeli bonds back in the late 50s or early 60s, which was a significant sum then.
Did that have repercussions?
It did. Several Arab countries banned her films for a time because of her outspoken support for Israel.
And wasn't there an incident during a hijacking?
The Entebbe hijacking in 1976. When Israeli hostages were being held in Uganda, Taylor actually offered herself to the hijackers as a replacement hostage, hoping her fame might help negotiate their release.
Wow, that's putting yourself on the line.
It showed her convictions weren't just talk. She was willing to take real risks for her beliefs.
Of course, we can't talk about Taylor without mentioning her status as a style icon, the look.
Immense influence. Think about Cleopatra again. That dramatic cat-eye makeup she wore in the film. It basically launched that entire trend for the 1960s. A huge shift from the softer 50s look.
And the jewelry. Legendary.
Oh, the jewelry. Richard Burton famously showered her with some of the most incredible gems in the world.
Like the Krupp diamond.
The Krupp diamond, yes. And the massive pear-shaped Taylor Burton diamond. And the historic La Peregrina pearl. Her private collection was arguably one of the most valuable ever assembled.
And even the jewelry ended up serving her cause, right?
After her death, yes.
Oh.
Christie's auctioned her collection and it fetched a record-breaking $156.8 million.
And where did the proceeds go?
To ETF, primarily, yes. The glamour ultimately funded the philanthropy. It all connected.
But behind this incredibly glamorous, seemingly indestructible facade, she dealt with serious health issues throughout her life.
Constant battles. She was actually born with scoliosis, a curvature of the spine.
And didn't she have a major injury way back when she was a child star?
Yes, during the filming of National Velvet. She fell off a horse and suffered a severe back fracture.
And that caused long-term problems.
Huge problems. Apparently, the fracture wasn't properly diagnosed or treated for years. It led to chronic, debilitating back pain for much of her adult life.
Which likely contributed to the later painkiller dependency.
Almost certainly. That early injury casts a very long shadow.
Okay.
It directly connects her childhood work trauma to her later struggles with addiction.
And there were so many other health crises over the years.
So many. That near-fatal pneumonia during Cleopatra, multiple hip replacements, surgery for a benign brain tumor in 1997, and of course the 2 public stays at the Betty Ford Center for her addictions. She was remarkably resilient, but her body went through a lot.
She eventually passed away in 2011.
Yes, at age 79 from congestive heart failure.
And even her funeral had a characteristic touch of Taylor flair.
It did. It was a private Jewish ceremony, but she'd specifically requested that it start 15 minutes late. Her representative famously said she even wanted to be late for her own funeral. A perfect final curtain call, in a way.
So looking back at this incredible life, how do we sum up her legacy? It feels so complex.
It is complex. She's often described rightly as one of the very last great stars to emerge from that classical Hollywood studio system,
But also,
but also one of the very first truly modern celebrities, someone whose fame transcended her film roles. Critics sometimes struggled with it, saying she was famous, well, for being famous.
which can sound dismissive, but maybe it captures something true about modern celebrity culture that she helped pioneer.
Perhaps, but the crucial thing is what she did with that fame, especially later on. That's where her legacy gets really powerful.
Particularly for the LGBTQ plus community.
Absolutely. She is revered as a major gay icon, not just for her glamour or her roles, but for her fierce, unwavering advocacy during the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
Sir Nick Partridge of the Terence Higgins Trust called her the first major star to publicly fight fear and prejudice towards AIDS. That's huge. She used her platform when it was risky and unpopular to do so. Thought.
Okay, so thinking about the sheer scope of her life, the way she navigated fame, power, personal chaos, there's that interesting thread of her national identity running through it. We mentioned she was born with dual British-American citizenship.
Right, a citizen of two countries from day one.
But that status wasn't fixed, was it? She actually gave up her U.S. citizenship at one point.
She did in 1966. Yeah. It seems it was primarily for tax reasons related to living abroad with Richard Burton, who's British. It was apparently legal complex. She even had to sign a second oath later to finalize it.
So she renounced her American citizenship, but then she got it back.
Yes. In 1977, when she was married to Senator John Warner and living in the U.S., she applied to have her U.S. citizenship restored. She stated her intention was to remain in the U.S. permanently as a politician's wife.
So she could be British when it suited her financially with Burton and American when it suited her politically with Warner. There's a certain flexibility there.
Malleability is a good word. It suggests maybe her primary citizenship, in a way, was to the global nation of celebrity rather than to any one country. She could navigate across borders and identities based on her personal circumstances.
But then you contrast that political flexibility, that ability to change nationality based on marriage or taxes, with the absolute rock-solid commitment she showed to her causes.
Exactly. There was no flexibility there. Her support for Israel was unwavering, even when it cost her film distribution.
Yeah.
And her fight against AIDS was this decades-long, deeply personal, financially demanding crusade that crossed all borders.
She was buying Israeli bonds, challenging U.S. presidents on health policy, funding global research. Her actions were profoundly committed even if her passport status shifted.
And maybe that's the final, really interesting thing to think about with her legacy. This woman, who could strategically navigate national identity, seemed to possess this core of unshakable moral conviction when it came to causes she believed in.
She took the very fame the studios tried to manufacture and control, turned it into an independent fortune through sheer business savvy with the perfumes.
And then plowed hundreds of millions of that money back into fighting a global health crisis, using her status to force uncomfortable conversations and demand action.
It's like she built this entirely new model, leveraged the chaos, owned the brand, fund the cause. She really did become this unstoppable force, didn't she? Completely outside the control of the systems that tried to define her early on.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If MGM had managed to keep her perfectly controlled, the ideal studio starlet, would she ever develop that fierce independence, that willingness to fight that she needed later for her activism? Maybe her greatest impact was only possible because of the turbulence, the scandals, the very things the public couldn't get enough of.